Welcome to our webinar on state program planning. I'm Karen Price, co-chair of Program and Action, and this year for the State League, I'm coordinating program planning. So why do we do program planning? Mainly it's to provide an opportunity to propose areas of focus for LWVMA program and action for the next biennium. As a grassroots organization, the State League provides this opportunity for local leagues, units, and members at large to provide input. From here on, I'm just going to say local leagues, but understand that I mean local leagues, units, and members at large. The key here is the word position. So there's two areas we're going to focus: action priorities, and that's action within our current positions. And then for areas where we don't have positions, we can propose new studies, review and update, which is really a restudy, and concurrence. Let's see, so LWVMA uses its positions to guide action and advocacy. League positions are created and amended through program planning. And we have actually 3 resources for positions, and these are on the website, and I'll show you how to find them later. But we created an appendix, which is a compilation of the positions of both LWVMA and LWVUS for quick reference. Then LWVMA publishes Where We Stand, which is more detailed just for LWVMA, and LWVUS creates every 2 years Impact on Issues, which is all of the US positions. All 3 of these are available on the program planning website. So let's take a quick look at the appendix. Okay, that didn't work. Never fear. Do you see a different thing now? Raise your hand if you don't see the appendix. Okay. So just a little rundown. So we have US positions, we have the date they were done, and then we have what the position is. So you can see we have lots of positions: voting rights, campaign finance, election processes, voting systems, executive, legislature, personnel, fiscal policy, tax structure, revenue, financing. And I'm just going to go down. I'm just going to stop when I get to the most recent one. We have, well, I'll keep going. We have a lot of positions because we've been around a long time and we've been doing studies for a long time. The most recent position was added a couple of years ago, and that's right here, the position on charter schools. That was the last position from 2017. And after the convention, we'll add our position on the most recent study of the ballot question process. Okay, back to here. Hope everybody's with me now. I'm back on the PowerPoint that says league positions. So that gives you an idea of some of our positions. And in order to do program planning, you need to be able to access those positions. So a little bit more on the background. So we are seeking input on action priorities where we already have positions and studies where we want to change or add a position. Let's take a look at how we get from study to action. So it starts with, so League of Women Voters at all levels conducts its educational and political actions based on positions derived from a consensus of its membership following formal studies of issues. So it starts with program planning. That's where we are now. We're at the very first phase of program planning. This is where leagues can propose studies, and then the state league gets all the input from the local leagues and recommends a study. It's not quite that simple, but that's in a nutshell. Then it goes to convention for members to approve the study. Then the study is conducted. League of Women Voters of Massachusetts does the research and consensus questions, and the local leagues do the reach consensus through their consensus meetings. Then a recommended position is prepared by the state league, and the convention approves the position. The final position is put in where we stand, and then action can be taken based on that position. So what's the nitty-gritty of what you have to do at the local level? This is the details of what I just presented with those little boxes. So the first thing that happened was the board developed the program planning guide and came up with action priorities and could have come up with recommended studies. Then the guide is sent to local leagues. This just happened this week. And by March 7th, local leagues and units should submit their program and action recommendations. So this is what we're doing right now. This is the phase we're in. Then it goes back to the board to develop recommended program and action based on local league input. Then, according to our bylaws, the program and action recommendations go back to the local leagues, including any proposals that were not recommended by the state league. And local leagues have an opportunity before convention, to suggest changes or additions. And then it goes to LWVMA for approval and adoption. So what are your league and unit tasks? So the first thing is to make a plan for doing state program planning with your league or unit. Second thing is to hold your program planning meeting, and the third is to report back to LWVMA by March 7th. So making a plan. So this doesn't have to be a big deal, or it can be a big deal. It depends on what you want to do. If your league really wants to do a study, propose a study or something like that, you might want to have a special meeting to discuss that. Or generally, you start with an individual or a small group who will coordinate program planning, which involves reviewing the materials, leading a discussion, and reporting back to LWVMA. As I was saying, then you need to hold your program planning meeting. It doesn't have to be, it can be a special meeting. It can be part of a board meeting. It can be incorporated into a local program planning meeting. It can even be done through a teleconference or any other means that your league comes up. There's no hard and fast rule on how you have to meet. And then to report back to the state league, you complete and submit the local league recommendation form. And the details of how to do that are in the program planning guide, and I'll get to it a little bit later on too. So all of the information is on the LWVMA website. This is the direct link. And it's also easy to find from the home page over on the right sidebar under quick links, program planning. So if you click on that, you go right to this place. I don't think I'll go there right now. I could do that at the end if you want me to. So the program, this is what the section of the program of the web page looks like with the materials. You'll want to download the guide and follow the instructions, most of which I'm going over today. You should also download one of the forms, depending on whether you're the league is reporting or a member at large is reporting. And then these last 3 items will take you to the actual positions, all available by link to PDFs. The appendix is the one we looked at earlier, and the other 2 are more detailed. So this, the guide, as I said, is essential to download and follow. So again, we're seeking input on these 2 areas, action priorities and new study or amended positions for future LWVMA action through a new study, review and update of a current position, and concurrence. Let's start with action priorities. So action priorities are broad, general subject areas the State League should focus its energy on. Action priorities must be consistent with our positions. They help define our focus and who we are. The State Board and the State Legislative Action Committee has developed suggestions for action priorities, but your league should review and respond. Action priorities approved at convention reflect LWVMA priorities, but it doesn't preclude the State League from taking action in other areas as situations warrant. If something comes up, you know, we will still address it if it's deemed important enough. So to help set up 2019, let's look back to 2017. These were the 4 action priorities in 2017 approved at the 2017 convention. Improving elections, promoting civic education and engagement, climate change and the environment, and equality and justice. This year, we've, you know, they don't change that much from year to year, but we do try to shift the focus sometimes a little bit, or maybe we found that one of the areas wasn't very clear. So this year we're proposing improving elections, informed voting and civic education, government for the common good, climate change and the environment, and equality and justice. So these are the suggested action priorities from LWVMA and the Legislative Action Committee, Board and Legislative Committee. So let's look at these a little bit more closely. The first one, improving elections, would include things such as advocating for election day registration, ranked choice voting, actions resulting from LWVMA ballot question study, campaign finance reform, and election security. Now, we're not voting on these subcategories. We're just voting on improving elections. But these are the things that we identified that sort of led us to make that an action priority. Inform voters and civic education. That would include informed and active participation in government and understanding major public policy issues, including the Voter's Guide, the Daniel Sharpman Grant Program, candidate forums, student video contest, and probably quite a few other things. Government for the common good catches a lot of the things that we work on. Education, transportation, gun safety, healthcare, and meeting basic human needs. Climate change and the environment, reducing carbon emissions to ensure a sustainable future by educating our members and the public, supporting legislation, other actions, and establishing regional collaboration that also includes land and water use. And then equality and justice, such areas as women's issues, protecting immigration, criminal justice, and income disparity. So those are the suggested action priorities. So when you do program planning in your local league, you would fill out a response form, and on the response form, the question is, Action priorities are broad general subject areas, blah, 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 as I said earlier. And you have 2 questions. Do you agree with the action priorities proposed on page 3 of the state program planning guide? And those were the 5 I just went over. And again, if you agree with the 5 general areas, the answer is yes. If you don't, the answer is no. You can list below your league's recommendations for action priorities or suggested changes to the recommended priorities. Remember that the league's resources are limited and our efforts should not be spread among too many categories. So here is your opportunity to take these suggestions and comment on them. The other area of input is what I'm going to call it studies, but studies includes these 3 kinds of things that lead to new or amended positions for future LWVMA action. So, okay. So these are required to develop a position where none exists, or where the current position is no longer supported or requires updating. Maybe something happened and our position just doesn't make sense anymore. So a new study involves research to provide a balanced view of the facts and issues on a public policy topic, followed by an effort to reach member agreement by consensus. A review and update of part or all of an existing position can to determine if changes are needed. And concurrence is developing a state position by adopting the position of another state or local league. In the board's discussion in December, and from the Legislative Action Committee, there were no suggested new studies, review and update, or concurrence. So there's no suggestion. So local leagues are just asked if they want to propose any of these without input from the board. So it's up to you guys. So if it's a new study or a review and update, a state study committee researches the topic, prepares materials, and supports local leagues. It is appointed by and reports to the state board. Generally takes 2 years to complete from one convention to the next. Recent examples of new studies, the ballot question process study that's ongoing right now, the charter school study that was completed in 2017. And a recent example of a review and update was the national review and update of money in politics in 2014 to 16. It was decided that we needed to review our, I think it was actually election, it was an election position in light of Citizens United. The position was written before Citizens United and it was updated after. It was an election financing position. And a review and update or a study. For LWVMA, new studies or review and update have to be limited to state level issues. Before proposing a new study, you should review the position documents, impact on issues, and where we stand, to be certain we have no current positions on which to base action. When considering an issue for study or review, answer the following questions. Would a study of this issue result in a position that could be used to influence legislative or state government policy? Is this an issue on which legislative action is needed? Will this issue still be timely when the study is completed in 2 or more years? Is it an issue that would attract participation from the community and our members, or that could entice new members and increase diversity of participating members? And quite importantly, will your league or unit be willing to get involved including having some of your members serve on a study committee and make a commitment to study the issue. Final considerations: the work associated with studies can only be completed successfully with a commitment of a team of volunteers. The level of member interest expressed will be a strong factor in the board's decision to recommend a particular study. And if you want to discuss a study idea before submitting it, feel free to contact me. And if I can't help, I'll find somebody who can. That's my email address, kprice@lwvma.org. And I'd be happy to arrange to probably talk about it on the phone. Would be much better. So on the response form under new study, you're asked to list your league's recommendations for any new studies, provide a brief description of the scope and intent of each study, and indicate your membership's willingness to participate in the study. You can also indicate if your league is not interested in a new study now. And limit your recommendations to no more than 2. Similarly, there's a section for review and update. Similar questions, and limit that to no more than 2. On that one, you need to describe the position that you think needs restudy. A concurrence is quite different and much easier. A state league or a local league for that matter can develop positions on issues by adopting positions other states or local leagues have arrived at after the study process. If another league has done an extensive study on a similar issue, it's okay to adopt their position. It's not going to work for for a lot of state issues because states have their own laws, but it does work for some. For example, in 2013, LWVMA adopted the California League's transportation position as a way of updating the Massachusetts position. If your league would like to recommend a concurrence, please include the issue you are considering and as much information as possible on the existing position you are recommending concurrence with, especially the name of the league which developed the position and a copy of the position. And on the response form, basically you list all the suggestions you have for adopting concurrence and all those things I just mentioned. The final step on this phase of program planning is to download the form from the web page. It's a Word file. Complete the form, save it, and submit it by email as an attachment to program@lwvma.org. And these are due by March 7th. So if you're interested in the state doing a study, to be successful, you should try to do a few things. One is to get the support of other local leagues. Because if just one league sends in a form asking for a study and no other leagues do, then the state league may or may not, is more likely not to recommend it. To get support from other leagues, you should start as soon as possible because they're all doing program planning at the same time. They're all going to be done on March 7th. They're all meeting within this time frame. Prepare a summary of your idea and send it to league leaders using the League Leader Google group. If you have any questions on that, you can email me. Encourage them to put the study on their response form. So I was the one who proposed the ballot question process study back in 2017. It was my league. So I wrote a Google group email, and this is not the whole thing, but you get the gist of it. So it explains what we want to do, why you might want to agree that this is a good idea, and some areas to potentially consider, you know, just putting out some information to try to get the other leagues interested. And then at the end, making sure they know what to do, join us and submit this as a new study for LWVMA, for MA program planning. A lot of leagues wrote me back and said, you know, we're planning on doing that, or no, we decided not to because, but most of them said they thought it was a good idea. And eventually there was enough interest and the state did recommend it. So then next, so after you submit your form, if you haven't recommended a study and you're not trying to drum up interest, what happens next is the state board evaluates and summarizes all of the response forms and decides whether to recommend a study to convention. In this case, study includes study, review and update. And here's what the board generally looks for: interest, and that can be reflected in the number of leagues submitting similar studies. Feasibility, is there member interest, and what's the likelihood of success? Importance and relevance, and these are the same bullet points that were listed before. Will it lead to legislative or state policy, legislative action, timely, and will it be of interest to our members? So the board makes a recommendation on all aspects of program and action. And collectively it's called program. It goes back to the local leagues for comment, as I said at the beginning, prior to convention. And there are also other opportunities for leagues and members to put forward a non-recommended item. And I would suggest if you're interested in that, you read the bylaws because it's fairly lengthy, but just to know that if the board doesn't recommend a study, for example, there are opportunities to still bring it before convention, which you can read about in the bylaws. And definitely, if you're going to do that, contact somebody at the state level who can help you make sure that you do all that's necessary to do that at convention. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for participating in our webinar.